From TV news to crime novels, Don Marsh joins us next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter. Welcome to City Corner. Well, Don Marsh has had a long career in radio and TV, but right now he's focusing on the written word. Hi, Don. Don Marsh, welcome to City Corner.
Steve, great to see you again.
It's nice to almost see you in person.
Close enough.
I think the last time we did see each other eye to eye, I'm going to guess it was about 3 years ago. You were a guest on this program because you've written a couple of books in the past,
Right.
and you did one on the perils of aging.
Oh, yes. I could do another one after the last year. Let me tell you that.
Refresh me on the name of the book again. It was Growing Old Gracefully. That's not it.
No, Coming of Age. Livers, how to cope with it. Coming of Age was the name of the book.
Yeah. Well, that was a few years ago, and you are a little bit older now. Do you ever go back and read that book again?
I'm afraid to. I'm afraid it will strike even closer to home than it did when I wrote it.
What's so interesting, Don, and I would kind of like to go over your career a little bit later in the program because you've been in this market a long time. You haven't been on radio or TV for a couple of years, though. You wrote those other books about getting older a while back. When did you decide you wanted to write a crime novel? And you've written two, by the way, that just recently came out. But how did all that start for you?
Well, number one, I had nothing else to do for a number of reasons because I'm no longer employed. And also because this doggone COVID has kept me pretty much locked up at home like it has most people. And beyond that, I spent 60 years concerned primarily with facts. As a journalist, you don't have a whole lot of leeway to depart from the facts. However, in fiction, you can make everything up. And that has a lot of appeal to me. It's very liberating, if you will. So it gave me an opportunity to create my own people, my own world, my own scenarios, and just have some fun with it. It's a lot of fun, and it's very therapeutic, I think, to be able to just sit there and do that sort of thing, particularly when there's nothing else to do.
I'm sorry. I wrote a newspaper column for the Telegraph for a couple of years. That was my only experience in writing. And I just wrote one column a month. So I would work on it a few minutes every day and had lots of times to think on it. I imagine your experience writing, a full-scale novel was a whole different experience because didn't you just sit down and work for hours at a time?
Pretty much, but Steve, writing comes more easily to me probably than most. When I look back over a long career in journalism, I don't know how many millions of words I've written. So sitting down and doing that is not difficult at all for me. I think journalists who've been around for a while and who write for a living in that regard have an easier time of it than people who haven't had that kind of experience. Writing on deadline and having to put thoughts together very, very quickly to meet those deadlines is pretty good training for sitting down at a computer, if you will. Used to be a typewriter, but sitting down at a computer and just start throwing words together. So I don't have any problem with that. I wrote 2 books in a year. It's probably close to 200,000 words. That's not bad, but I think that anybody who's been around for a while in this business could do the same thing.
But isn't a lot different, like journalistic writing, like I used to write, and like you would do, of course, for radio and TV, where you're being objective and you're writing the facts. It's a whole lot different than using your imagination.
Well,
According to you, maybe not so different.
Well, it is different because when you are restricted by the facts, you can't really depart from them. You can determine which ones are going to come first and which ones will come later. But in writing fiction, you can do anything you want. It's your world. You create a world, and you can make it go however you want, for better or for worse. That's not to say that these 2 books are the greatest novels ever written. I think they're entertaining, but you do it and you hope that people will appreciate it, and and have a little time to enjoy it. It's certainly easier to read than some of the news stories I've written over the years.
Yeah. Well, what about the whole mystery crime genre? Is that something you were a fan of just your whole life? Or those the type of books you've read your whole life?
You know, I read a lot. Since I left public radio, I've read more than 100 books, and I've written too. So, you know, I'm really kind of immersed in that world. But I've always tried to make it a point to read something that is heavier, biography, history, and then go to something lighter, fiction. And I like crime thriller, I like spy thrillers. And I got during this last year and a half, I got interested in a writer thanks to my son who recommended him by the name of John D. MacDonald. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I don't think so.
I wouldn't say he's before your time, Steve. He certainly wasn't before mine. He wrote he wrote for about 25 years, very prolifically, and he died in the mid 80s. But he created a character named Travis McGee. Travis McGee was not a detective. He was a guy who lived on a houseboat in Florida and had a knack for solving problems that people would bring to him. And, you know, if they had a problem to recover something, he would always take half of whatever they recovered. But McDonald, as the writer, he's a terrific writer. You know, much better than most who are in this genre. He was really a good writer. And he was also a little ahead of his time in that the situations that he put his protagonist in, Travis McGee, uh, showed a lot of social consciousness. He was concerned about the environment before anybody was talking about global warming. He was talking about social justice. He was talking about fairness in the workplace and you know, equal pay for equal jobs, women's rights, and that sort of thing. And he weaved these into his stories. And his stories were always interesting because of that, and because of his characters, and just because he wrote so very well. So I read all 31 of his Travis McGee books. MacDonald wrote more than 60 books, only 31 of them about Travis McGee. I read them chronologically to see how he would develop character and how this this whole his whole approach to it changed over the years. And he became, you know, an older man as he was going through this process of writing these books. Anyway, when I read the last one, I said, you know, I think I'd like to try something like that. I'm not going to do it as well as he did, but that's what I did. My first book of this past year was A Wink and a Nod, and the principal character in that is a fellow whose name is Tom McGee, but everybody called him Travis McGee, because of his fondness for John D. MacDonald. As it was, I dedicated the book to John D. MacDonald for having inspired me to get into this. Anyway, Travis McGee, listen to this, is an 80-year-old retired journalist, and he's called upon by an old friend to help her find her husband who's been missing. She can't collect his life insurance until they find him dead, and she assumes he's dead because he's been gone for almost a year. Anyway, so he doesn't want to do it, but he does it, and he gets involved in with a series of characters ultimately take him into the world of illicit drugs, and he finds himself in way over his head for an 80-year-old guy traipsing around trying to resolve this mystery. Anyway,
Well,
that's
I have a question. I've got a question I don't understand.
the question you don't understand.
How can you, Don, relate to a retired journalist in their 80s? I don't get it.
That's where the creativity comes in. Making it up, making it up. I'll tell you something you'll find funny. I don't know if the audience will, but the reason he is called upon by this former colleague to help find her husband, he feels beholden to her because as an older man, he was taking a part-time job as a copy editor for a local newspaper. And one of the female employees of that newspaper accused him of being sexist because he said that she looked pretty. And does that sound familiar to you? Anyway, this woman came to his defense, and so he felt beholden to her. So he took on the task of finding her husband.
Okay, I'll just pass this on to the audience. Just Google Don Marsh and Karen Foss, see what comes up.
What a nightmare that was.
Yeah, well, you lived through it. You lived
Oh
through it, all
yeah,
right.
I lived through it, and I'm better off for it. I have to tell you.
Well, since you bring it up, were there some tough moments just for you personally? You know, going through an upheaval in your career like that, and what, listening to what people said about it and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, most of what people said about it was really pretty encouraging to me. The overwhelming response to it was in favor of what the heck were those people thinking in terms of bringing up something like this. I wouldn't mention names, but you know the people having been colleagues for so long. But you know, they they came to the aid of this young producer who felt that because I said Karen Foss looked great when I met her before a program that we were going to do, she thought that that was inappropriate. And the fact that she said that I should not respect women for their appearance, it should be for their accomplishments. Well, I certainly respected Karen Foss for her accomplishments, as was evidenced in the interview that I did with her moments after this greeting and the introduction that I wrote to bring her into the interview. Anyway, when management decided that she was right, and they called me on the carpet with one young producer, whom I will not name, but you will know, sitting there like Louis Brandeis on the Supreme Court, getting ready. I said, "What's this all about?" They called me into an office. I said, "What's this all about?" And he said, "Your inappropriate comments, your insensitivity." And I said, "Oh, really?" And then his boss came into the office, and I said, "Do you really think that my saying Karen Foss looked great was inappropriate?" And he went, mm. And I said, "See ya. I'm done. I'm not going to be around you people anymore." It was that simple. Did I
Well,
want to
Don,
leave? Yeah, no.
we need to take a break here, and we've got more to talk about in your book. But I want to say one more thing before we go. I told you this before. I haven't seen you in person. 3 years ago, you came onto this set to talk about your other book, and you and I hadn't seen each other because I had quit a year before that, I think. And you came in and looked at me and said, "Hey, Steve, great to see you. You look great." And I was not offended in any way.
Well, that's the reaction. That's the reaction that 99% of the people have. Most of it on social media and some personally. But some people will still come up to me and say that.
All right, Don, hang on there, and we've got more important things to talk about, like your new life, and we'll do that right after this on City Corner.
Great.
There's so many reasons to love St. Louis, you can't pick just one.
What I love about St. Louis is the 79 unique neighborhoods and 108 beautiful city parks, including Forest Park, which is actually larger than Central Park in New York, and the gorgeous Tower Grove Park right here.
And there's always something new to experience, no matter the time of day or the season. So come and experience St. Louis.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
The Missouri Botanical Garden is loved by green thumbs and non-gardening types alike because you can play.
You can relax.
And there's always something new to experience, no matter the time of day or the season. And learn about conservation and one-of-a-kind plants.
So come and experience St. Louis.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. We're talking to Don Marsh today. Don and I worked together for many years on radio. You know him from St. Louis radio and television for years and years. Don, I bet for a lot of people, probably think you grew up in St. Louis only because you have worked here so long, since I want to say early 70s?
1971. November 22nd, 1971. An easy date to remember because it's the date of the Kennedy assassination, the anniversary of the assassination.
Right, but just briefly, your background, you were from somewhere on the East Coast, I think, and you started your broadcasting career like in the armed services, didn't you?
I was not, I was a civilian working for the armed services. I was a civilian for the American Forces Network in Germany from 1960 to 1966. And during that time, I worked briefly in Frankfurt as a radio news writer, and then went to Munich, where I was responsible for covering developments in Eastern Europe. And then I was transferred to Bonn the last 3 years, where I was covering, you know, the political, diplomatic, Cold War situation that was prominent at that time. I was there during the Kennedy visit, and there during the Cuban Missile Crisis. A lot of things that happened that were very scary for those of us who were in Europe at the time, because we thought, as they said, the balloon could have gone up at any time, and the Russians were just a couple of miles away.
Well, as far as St. Louis goes, you said 1971. You worked at Channel 2 for many, many years.
Yeah.
Then at Channel 30 as a news anchor, both places.
I
And
spent-
know you. I'm sorry.
After leaving Europe, I spent 6 years in Baltimore before
Right.
coming to St. Louis. Yeah.
Right. And then after your TV career in St. Louis, it was in 2005, if my notes are right. You started at St. Louis Public Radio
Right.
and were there until 2019. That's how I know you, because I worked there for 17 years myself.
Mhm.
And I did the Cityscape program. You did St. Louis on the Air, and I'd fill in for you once in a while or do little pieces. So we saw each other in the hall a lot.
Yeah, we did. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed our conversations when we had time to have them.
Yeah, I'm glad it was only you and me and nobody recorded those.
Yeah.
But just to get back to, you've written these two like crime thriller mystery novels. They've both come out in the same year, just a couple of months apart, I guess. And we were just talking about A Wink and a Nod. And you say how it's about this retired journalist who's trying to help solve this mystery. Is there any more about the plot you want to share with us?
Not a whole lot, not beyond what I've already done, because there are some surprises and I think some interesting turns during the course of it. And, you know, I would hate to telegraph those. I would like people to read the book and you know, discover them for themselves.
But John, if you wrote 2 full-length books this last year, so that you had to have been working on them at the same time to me, right?
Well, no, not really. The Wink and a Nod was finished very early in the year. And I set it out for, queried some publishing houses to see if I could sell it. And it takes forever. You send it out a manuscript one at a time, and you have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get them back. And it wasn't accepted. Uh, you know, so that was a dilemma. While that was going on, I was working on the other one, The Damned and the Doomed, which I had in mind for quite a while. I'd been ruminating, if you will, for probably a couple of years. So I was working on that while the other one was being bandied about. I sent The Damned and the Doomed out to a publisher, and it was accepted. But they said it's going to take us, for some reason, 269 days to get the book out. And I thought to myself, 269 days. I'm 82 years old. Do I have 269 days? So I came upon something that a self-publishing operation through Amazon. It's called Kindle Direct Publishing. Now it's not a vanity publishing thing, which you spend a lot of money to get a book published, and you get 1,000 of them, and you give 50 of them away to friends, and you have 950 books in your basement. It's not that kind of a deal. Kindle Direct Publishing doesn't cost a nickel. You go through this intricate process of working through the internet and sending it digitally to Amazon. And it is a fairly tricky process. I had some problems with it at first. And they publish the book. They put a cover on it. You choose the cover. You go through the entire process yourself. But when you're done, you have a book. And what they do is when they put it online, they'll market it for you. And if one person buys the book, they'll print one copy of the book. If 100 people do it, they'll print 100 copies. But they don't print 100 copies until 100 people have ordered it. So it's not like a publisher publishes a book and has a bunch of them hanging around that don't get sold. They only sell books that are ordered. And it's a terrific process. I mean, I recommend it to anyone who's got the bug to write.
Right now, one of your new books is A Wink and a Nod. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
The second one, and maybe it's just because of my own work experience and life experience, that when I heard the title, The Damned and the Doomed, I thought you were writing about careers in broadcasting.
You're not the first person to say that, Steve. Believe me. Not maybe just my life as a whole, not only in broadcasting. I guess that could be the title for a lot of lives in broadcasting, Steve. Right? I mean, that's not the easiest world to live in. What's
the Doomed and the Damned? What's that one about?
Okay, this one is quite different than the earlier one. This one, I call it a mystery with history. And that's because, let me try to figure out a way to explain this that will make even more sense. The story takes place from Nazi Germany in the 1930s through the Holocaust, and then comes to St. Louis at some point. It connects all the dots between events that happened back 50 years ago and modern day St. Louis, right up to today, to be perfectly honest with you. So there's a lot of history in there about the Nazi era and the Holocaust, and I think a pretty good mystery that evolves out of that. Again, there's not too much I can tell you about it without destroying a lot of the surprises and the mystery, if you will. But it involves a brutal murder of two men in modern day Eastern City, you name it, unnamed Eastern City. Two men, and a detective in that town is about to throw it in a cold case file when he learns that these two men who didn't know each other, and the only connection between them was that they were both German, but he discovers in investigating their murders that both of them had come to St. Louis at one point at the same time. So we go back and look at who these guys were or might have been, and then and they are the doomed. The damned are the Jewish family that basically is part of this story, and ultimately with that St. Louis connection. So we have a segment called The Damned, one called The Doomed, and then The Damned and The Doomed together in the third part.
Well, Don, you explained how these books, how you're doing these books, the publisher and so forth, if you call that a publisher. So we won't probably find your books at the local bookstore at the mall because we probably won't be there. So what's the best way for people to find them?
The best way is Amazon. It's available in an ebook and a paperback book on Amazon. It's the easiest way to do it. You can, if you order it today, you'll probably have it 2 days from now, and that will include the time it takes for them to print it and get it to you. It's incredible, incredibly fast.
I'm wondering where you are. I'm looking behind you there. It looks like maybe you're in your home office.
Yeah, spent a lot of time here.
Is that where you write?
Yes.
So I'm just curious, we've just got a couple minutes left, but I'm wondering, I always ask writers how disciplined they are in their writing. I told you I wrote part-time and I could just do a minute here, a minute there, but when you're writing seriously like you do, did you like set a certain time of day, like I'm gonna work every day between 1 and 3? How structured did you have to be?
I think that's very important. I think it's terrifically important to have that structure. You know, some days you can do 500 words, and other days you can do a couple of thousand words, really depending on, you know, so many different things. But no, I think it's very, very important to have that structure and make yourself sit down and do it, whether you want to or not, or whether you really have anything going in terms of plot or structure. It's interesting that once you get going, things kind of loosen up and you get different ideas and you can take it in different directions that you hadn't even thought of when you sat down.
I want to remind people that the 2 books that are out there right now, A Wink and a Nod, and The Damned and the Doomed. And I just have a feeling maybe in 2021, we'll be hearing from you again sometime.
I think so. I've written a number of children's poems that I'm hoping to get out there sometime through a traditional publisher, if you will, because I'll need an illustrator for it, and hope to get that going. And by the way, I have to point out that you were the one that got me on the coming of age book because of one of your columns. Do you remember that you had written about getting older and looking back and that sort of thing, and that was the trigger for that book. So
Well,
I thank you for that.
I didn't see any royalties or my picture on the back cover, but thanks anyway, Don.
Well, you know, I didn't see much in the way of royalties either, come to think of it.
Well, Don, we wish you all the best, and it's really good. And one of these days, maybe you'll be back in the studio with us.
I would love to, Steve. And thank you for asking me, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Carry on, Don. Hang in there.
You too.
That's Don Marsh. He's now an author, so look up his stuff. I'm Steve Potter. That's all the time we have today on City Corner. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.